Hello, my name is Hans Rosenfeldt and I'm the writer of Wolfzomer. Thank you so much for reading my book and for all the questions that you sent in to my publisher in Holland. I cannot answer all of them, but these are the ones that were most frequently asked. Here we have a question from Karin van Dorsen. In the book trailer, you mentioned that you're fascinated by Haparanda. Can you specify what it is that fascinates you so much? I can try to specify what it is that fascinates me so much. I think you have to go there to really understand what I mean. First of all, it's beautifully located on the border, just on the riverside, on the border to Finland. So you have the water, you have the vast forests around it, you have the archipelago outside. So nature-wise, it's just stunning. To be up there, up in the north, nature-wise. Then the city or the town, it's a small town, it's about 9,000 people living in it. I think it's fascinating because it once was such an important town. During the wars, this was the only connection between east and west. That was through Haparanda. That was the only railway. It was the only land connection between east and west. So everybody gathered up there. The post office outside Haparanda was actually the post office that had the most packages and mails in the whole world a couple of years in the 1940s. So I mean, it's a place that has been really a metropolitan city in the world, and now it's not. It's, as I said, it's a small city with 9,000 inhabitants, and you kind of feel the air of greatness that it once was, and I'm not sure it even wants that back. I just think it kind of lives on that, but not really living up to it. There is a place in the book where I say it's like an old prima donna kind of doing her makeup in front of a mirror and trying to fix herself up, but you know, she has aged and she can't really cover it all. And I think that is the feeling when you get with Haparanda. So much has happened. There has been such a magnificent, vibrant life, and now it's just a little slower and a little more tired, and but still, you know, there's a lot of dignity in it. Did that make any sense? I'm not sure, but I strongly recommend you to visit it. It is a fascinating place. So here is a question from Chantal Hofmeister. How did you think of the idea of the wolf with the human remains in its stomach? Is it from the Red Riding Hood story? And do you plan everything beforehand, or did you think of this during the writing of the book? Well, to answer the first part of your question first, I don't really remember how I came up with the idea of the wolf with the human remains. I had this idea of the drug deal going wrong in Finland. I had this idea that I put all of this in Haparanda because of its closeness to Finland and then Russia. So I had this kind of idea, and then I just thought that, you know what, I don't really remember. It's not from Red Riding Hood, I remember that much. I think it was just, a cool way for me, instead of just finding a body and then trying to identify it and to find out where it came from and why. I think the wolf and the human remains in the stomach, I think that was just kind of a cooler thing to do. I also somewhere probably thought that this would be a good idea to kind of turn expectations, because a lot of people in Sweden still think that wolves are actually really, really dangerous and that they will attack a human if they get any opportunity to do so, which is not true. There hasn't been a person being killed by a wolf in Sweden for over 200 years. But you know, there is the people who wants the wolf in our forest. There are people who really doesn't want the wolf in our forests. So I think I kind of turned expectation there by saying, oh, this is a wolf that actually ate a human, and then you realize, no, it was just eating part of an already dead person. So yeah, all of these kind of merged together, but it's what I do. I do find, you know, different ways to find human remains. It's kind of my job. Second question, do I plan everything beforehand, or did I think of this during the writing? I do plan everything in the forehand. I am never, I would say, surprised, or my characters never surprises me when I write. I do chapter by chapter break down the whole story. I know where I'm going. I know which way my story is going to go to get there. So very, very little is thought up on the spot. I would say pretty much nothing, actually. I'm very well planned. Another question here is from Tineke Sprakman Visha. Some of the chapters are written from the perspective of the town. It was a little confusing and then it fell in place. What was the inspiration for giving the town a part in the book? There are quite a few answers to that one. I think one reason, while there are chapters kind of from the town perspective, is that I did a lot of research on this one. I visited the place quite a lot. I did a lot of research, and I usually don't do that. So I had all these facts and all these, the stories about the town, and I wanted it to be a part of the book, but to kind of have characters talking about it is usually very odd. You don't usually talk about your city like that if you're not a tourist guide. And to kind of just bring it in the regular chapters would also feel a little bit like I was going to, oh, look at me, I've done my research, I know this and I know that. So then I decided, I read a long time ago in the Ed McBain novels about the 87th Precinct. I remembered, I think, that he had, in some books, he let that figurative town, Isola, he let that had a voice. And I thought that could be something that I could use here. So it was kind of a mix of being fascinated and wanting to tell more about the actual town of Haparanda, and the fact that I've seen it in an Ed McBain book. And then it turned out to be almost like a Greek choir in a Greek drama. It's someone who knows everything, sees everything, knows the future, but can't really interact or change anything. And I kind of liked that idea when I started working on it. So it got its own voice. I don't know if it's going to stay that way in the second book, but it was a fun experiment for me. And I'm glad you liked it. Question time again, this time from Nathalie Palles. She is asking, there are still some unanswered questions in the end of the book. Will there be a sequel? And the short answer to that is yes, there will be a sequel. We are going to, or we already have, written another Sebastian Bergman novel. I will start on the sequel this August, so I guess it will be out next year. The working title is The Garden of the Bear, sticking with a kind of animal theme there. And it will answer some of the questions that are left hanging at the end of this book. Not all, because there's going to be a third installment as well, but some of them are going to be answered in the next book. So yeah, 2 years, I guess, from now, something like that. Question again, this time from Ingrid den Oudsten. Thank you for writing this book. Well, thank you for reading it. Is there a special significance for the wolf in the story? Oh, that's a tricky one. I mean, story-wise, it's not really that significant. It kind of is, the finding of the wolf is what kicks everything in motion. It's what brings Hannah and Katja together. It's what starts the whole story. But the wolf in itself doesn't really have that much of significance. I answered the question earlier about the wolf, and I think part of that answer is also valid here. It's I wanted to write something about, because I am one of the persons who think we could actually have wild animals in our forests like the wolf, and not everyone agrees with me, and that's fine. But I wanted this to kind of just to say, oh, there's a wolf eating a human, which rarely or never happens in Sweden, and then kind of turn that expectations are upside down, saying, oh no, it didn't actually just ate part of an already dead person. So the significance is just it gave me a small opportunity to kind of discuss the the wolf question, but it's not a big thing. So sorry, no, it doesn't really have that much of significance. I don't know if they'll ever air this answer, but that's the truth. So here is a question from Renate Versluis and Anita de Groot. The question is, do you prefer writing a book or a scenario for a movie or television series, and what is the difference? Well, I do prefer to write what I am writing currently. So if I'm writing a television series, I prefer that. If I'm writing a book, I prefer that. And I'm also often in the lucky circumstance where if I'm kind of bored with one, I can do another. So I like what I'm doing most of the time. And the biggest difference is that when you write a book, you have to write it all. You have to kind of build the whole house. While you're writing a television series or a script, that is just the blueprint where other people is going to kind of build it up from. There are photographers, there's directors, actors, set designers, all of them helping you kind of bring that story to life. While in a book, it's only you. You have to write what people think, you have to write how people look, you have to write how places look, what they smell like, what they feel like. All of that is on you, while in television, you're a team. Story-wise, I work exactly the same. I break down the whole story before I start writing into chapters or scenes, and then I just write them in order, whether it's a book or a script. So work-wise, not so different. So here is a question from Erna Bolink. Why did you decide to write a book on your own and not with Mikael Hjort, eller Mikael Hjort, som jag kallar honom, as I call him? Well, it wasn't a decision that was kind of deliberate. I didn't phone up Michael and said, you know, I'm not going to write with you for a year. It was just we couldn't get our calendars together. He was busy. I had a gap in mind where where we were supposed to write a new Sebastian Bergman. He couldn't do it, so I thought, well, I had been thinking for a while about, can I do a book on my own? And I had the embryo of a story back in my head. So I thought, okay, since we can't write together, this is the perfect time to see if I can get that book out by myself. So I wrote Wolfzomer. But we will be back, Mikael and I, next year. So that work continues. So this was just, while he was on hiatus, I kind of wrote another book. Next question is from Fanny van Hemelen. Were there any disadvantages writing without a partner, or does it give you more freedom? Well, I'll be honest with you and say there were huge disadvantages writing without a partner. I've been doing television and writing with Michael for so long, so I realized I was really, really used to collaborations. And the biggest disadvantage in writing yourself was that nobody knew the story as well as I did. Whenever I've been working on television project or with Michael, if there's a question, or if you think, is this really the best way of doing this? Are we thinking the right way here? You just pick up the phone and you ask him or someone else who knows the material as well as you do, and you ask them and you discuss it, and you realize that, oh yeah, it was the best way of doing it, or no, wait, let's do this instead, that's much better. Here, when those questions arose, I had no one to talk to because no one knew the material as well as I did, so I was literally on my own, and it took me, I'd say, half a book before my brain kind of switched into solo mode and I really started to enjoy that process. The first half, I wanted to call someone every day to discuss, minor things or bigger things. But yeah, half the book, then I kind of say, oh, you know what? It's fun to write on his own. Which answers your second question. Yes, there is more freedom in writing by yourself because you make all the decisions. Also a little scary because if there are bad ones, well, they're all on you. But yeah, definitely more freedom, but scary freedom. Next question is from Miriam. It is, which author would you like to meet yourself, and what question would you ask him or her? That's a tricky one, but I think I will settle for, it would be great to meet Stephen King, because he is such a brilliant storyteller and seems like a legitimately nice guy to hang with. And what I would ask him a lot of questions, but what I really would ask him is how he kind of came up with the idea for Carrie, which was probably one of the novels that made me want to write myself when I read it. I have to say, it kind of changed my life. I had never read anything like Carrie when I read that in 1974, 10 years old. So we were going to talk a lot about Carrie if I ever get to meet him. Next question comes from Danny van Hoyman. Who are your favorite authors? Well, I don't know if I have any favorite authors anymore. I can tell you right away, I do not read crime novels, so there won't be any crime novel writers on this short list. Because I work with crime every single day, 7 days a week, I write it in one form, script-wise or book. So I really don't read it. When I have the time to read, I tend to read something else, usually fact. So let's start with two great fact book writers. It's a Swedish one called Magnus Westerbro, who is just brilliant. And then, of course, it's Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote the book Sapiens and a few more. And if you haven't read Sapiens, you really, really should. It's a brilliant book. When it comes to fiction, right now I'm reading Sebastian Barry, which I enjoy a lot, about the American Civil War, and also Kazuo Ishiguro, which I think is just a brilliant author. So I've read all of his books, and so I guess he's kind of a favorite since I've read them all. But then I have to say, many of my favorite authors write graphic novels. I read a lot of graphic novels, so it's Brian Michael Bendis, which I think is just brilliant. There's Alan Moore, there's Ed Brubaker, Dan Slott. So my favorite authors are pretty much all, I'd say, writers of graphic novels, and where I think probably Brian Michael Bendis is on top of my list. So here is a question from Elizabeth, and it's a strange one. If you could be a bad guy in a crime thriller, would you be like the criminals you write about? And I would say yes and no. I would probably be as clever. I think I would be a great bad guy, actually. I think I would be extremely clever and good at what I'm doing. I will not be so bloodthirsty, though. I would try to be probably more of a cat burglar or something. I would try for the very longest not to hurt, harm or kill anyone. But yes, I would be brilliant as a bad guy.